My name is Sara Muhlhausen. I am the MFA in the ceramics department. My thesis exhibition was entitled "Like a Decay in Our Bones." The title comes from a specific Bible verse that actually states that a honorable woman is like the crown on her husband's head, but a woman who brings him shame is like a decay in his bones. So the title came after the work was pretty much finished. The work itself is a critique on biblical rhetoric against women and survivors of sexual trauma. So for me, that specific quote just resonated pretty deeply with how shame can feel and how it does embed itself so deeply. I feel that I can't create something until I've really dived into some of the history of it, even just the tiny bit of it, because these were inspired by a lot of things that happened to women in the Bible. So the figures represent things like being physically dismembered, stripped of hair, that's a punishment that's rained down on the women of Zion, and then actually exposing genitals as a shameful thing. And so a lot of these figures, if you look at them, their legs are open, or in a few cases they are very much available to you, but they are all bald, and they've all been dismembered and ripped of any kind of protection since they don't have their arms. On a technical standpoint, the way that these are made, the figures themselves are built solid in clay and then actually cut apart, which I find amazingly appropriate for the work. But they're cut apart and then hollowed and pieced back together. The expressions and the poses are really important. So with the poses, I think a lot about popular culture, like pop stars have dance moves and things like that, and the way people move, that is most generally used to draw sexual attraction or appeal in that way. For the facial expressions, I went through a few different things trying to understand what I wanted them to be. And I came to the realization that they needed to be a little bit more subtle and always have a sense of awe, if not fear. There are two that I find to be a little bit more on an extreme side, the one in the confessional and then the one I lovingly call the frog piece. Their faces are a little bit more confrontational, and I find them to be set together, and especially where they're placed in the installation, they feel more like the defiant moments in the gallery. They are truly afraid, and they are placed in spaces where they're having to confess consistently. They are perpetually trying to gain forgiveness and reconciliation that they will never truly get. These two that are here among the pews felt like pieces, as I saw them in the installation, felt like pieces that were trying to reconcile wanting a spiritual fulfillment and achieving sexual desires as well, and not being able to have both. And then the three that are more so in the center space, the one under the canopy, the one on the altar, and then the one here on the saint stand, those felt like those spaces, or I categorize those more as women being put into spaces they can't fully achieve. It is the mother, it is the saint, it is Mary, it is the perfection. A lot of these I do see as self-portraits. Each figure is meant to be pretty much the same figure. They're all modeled after my own face. I use my own body a lot as a reference. And so I felt a lot of the things that I am expressing with this work personally in connection to the church. Having experienced my own version of sexual trauma very young, it was hard to be able to go to the church and confess that. And it didn't make sense to be able to go into confession and say things like, I swore at my mom, I'm not nice to my sister, and then have to say something like what I had experienced. And the two just didn't fit, and I didn't understand how they could truly understand what I had gone through and then still say the things that they were. And as I got older, those patterns started to really come up a lot more, and that's where I started to kind of pull away from the faith pretty heavily. And then this just feels like a real culmination of that, like fully understanding what happened and how that loss of faith happened and what it is that I truly desire now as an adult. I think what would be important for me as people view this installation is just an awareness of how much not only the church controls women, but we just control women in general. We're not allowing these women to express themselves the way that it's appropriate. We're not allowing for true healing after sexual trauma, at least in the church. I think things are getting better, as I've seen, but there are still moments where when you see a news article that talks about a rape victim and what she was wearing, or the fact that she was out drinking on her own, and it shouldn't be like that. I shouldn't have to carry my keys between my fingers to be able to walk home, or feel guilty because I wanted to have a drink. So that's really what it is. I just want to start this conversation and start to make effective change in those mentalities.